In the cold silence of Zenthera Prime's war-torn wilderness, a lone figure stumbled through the desolation. Her blue skin, now marred with burns and gashes, was a stark contrast against the planet's ash-covered terrain. Lysara, a Xantheran medic, clutched her side, her tri-limbed body aching with every step. The battle had been brutal, and her unit, once a proud detachment of healers and warriors, was annihilated. She was alone, wounded and abandoned. The air reeked of ozone and scorched metal, remnants of the orbital bombardments that had turned this once vibrant world into a graveyard. Her people, advanced as they were, had not been prepared for the ferocity of the invaders. They had come without warning, an alliance of brutal species bent on domination. Lysara's hands trembled as she activated a damaged med kit, attempting to seal a deep wound on her shoulder. The device sputtered, barely functional, and she bit back a cry of pain as it delivered its weak healing pulse. She collapsed against a jagged rock formation, her body unable to go on. The stars above were indifferent, shimmering coldly over a planet that had fallen into chaos. She closed her eyes, whispering a prayer to the Xantheran deities. It was a plea for mercy, or perhaps just a wish for the end to come swiftly. Then she heard it, the crunch of boots against the brittle ground. Lysara's eyes snapped open, her senses screaming danger. The invaders had no doubt sent scouts to comb through the wreckage for survivors. She fumbled for the small plasma dagger at her belt, her fingers weak but determined. If they had come for her, she would not go quietly. But as the figure emerged from the shadows, her breath caught in her throat. It was no Xantheran, nor one of the monstrous invaders. The figure was tall, clad in battered combat armor that bore marks of its own battles. His face, pale and angular, was streaked with dirt and sweat. A human. Lysara had heard of them in stories passed between her people. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, scrappy and unpredictable. Their technology lagged behind many of the older species, yet they had a reputation for resilience that bordered on the absurd. They fought like cornered beasts, and their will to survive was unmatched. This one looked no different. The human soldier's eyes locked onto hers. His rifle, cradled in his arms, lowered slightly as he took in her battered form. Lysara tensed, unsure of his intentions. "Easy," he said, his voice calm but firm. She didn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Slowly, he slung the rifle over his shoulder and crouched beside her, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. Lysara flinched as he reached for her. The human stopped short, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. He pointed to her wounds, then to the small medical pouch at his hip. She hesitated, her instincts warring with her reason, but ultimately nodded. She had no other choice. The human worked quickly, his hands deft and efficient. He muttered under his breath in his strange language, occasionally glancing at her as if to reassure her. His medical supplies were primitive compared to Xantheran technology, but they were effective. She felt the sting of antiseptics and the tight pull of bandages as he tended to her injuries. Despite herself, she marveled at his focus. "Lysara," she managed to rasp, her voice hoarse from dehydration. She tapped her chest, hoping he would understand. The human paused, then smiled faintly. "Jason," he replied, tapping his own chest. His voice carried a warmth that eased her frayed nerves. As the hours passed, Jason stayed by her side, sharing his limited rations and offering her water from his canteen. Though their communication was limited to gestures and expressions, a fragile bond began to form. Lysara learned that he, too, had been separated from his unit during the chaos of the battle. He was as much a survivor as she was, lost in a hostile land with no guarantee of rescue. When night fell, the temperature plummeted. Jason built a small fire, its warmth a welcome relief against the biting cold. They sat in silence, their weary bodies leaning against the same rock. Lysara studied him through the flickering light, her curiosity growing. He was unlike anyone she had ever known. Though his species was often dismissed as primitive by the galaxy's more advanced civilizations, there was something undeniably captivating about him. His determination, his kindness, it defied the stereotypes. "Why?" she asked softly, not expecting him to understand. Why help me? Jason glanced at her, his brow furrowing as he tried to decipher her question. After a moment, he seemed to grasp her meaning. He pointed to himself, then to her, and finally drew a circle in the air, encompassing their surroundings. His lips curved into a faint smile as he spoke a single word: survive. The days turned into weeks as they navigated the hostile terrain together. Jason proved to be resourceful, crafting makeshift tools and setting traps for food. Lysara, once her strength began to return, used her medical knowledge to treat his injuries and improve their chances of survival. They became an unlikely team, their reliance on each other growing with every challenge they faced. They encountered dangers at every turn, roving bands of invaders, treacherous terrain, and the ever-present threat of starvation. Yet through it all, Jason never wavered. His determination was infectious, and Lysara found herself drawing strength from his unyielding spirit. One night, as they huddled together in a cave to escape a violent storm, Lysara looked at him and saw not just a survivor, but a savior. He had every reason to abandon her, to prioritize his own survival over hers. Yet he had chosen to stay, to fight for her as fiercely as he fought for himself. In him, she saw the very essence of humanity's resilience. Eventually, they found a way to signal for rescue. Lysara's people, alerted to her location, arrived in a sleek transport vessel. Jason stood back as she reunited with her kin, his expression unreadable. She turned to him, her heart heavy with the knowledge that this might be the last time she saw him. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Though he couldn't understand her words, she hoped he could feel their weight. Jason nodded, his smile tinged with sadness. He raised a hand in farewell as she was ushered onto the ship. As the vessel ascended, Lysara pressed a hand to the window, her eyes never leaving the lone figure standing amidst the desolation. In the years that followed, Lysara often spoke of the human soldier who had saved her life. His courage and compassion became a legend among her people, a testament to the strength of a species that refused to surrender, no matter the odds. And somewhere on a distant planet, Jason continued his fight, carrying with him the memory of a blue-skinned medic who had shown him that even in the darkest of times, hope could be found in the most unlikely of alliances.